I never thought I'd find myself here, recounting this tangled mess of family drama for strangers on the internet. But I've been carrying this burden alone for too long, and maybe, just maybe, someone out there will get it. My name's Alex, and I'm a 31-year-old guy living a pretty ordinary life. No wife, no kids, just me, my work, and my tiny apartment. My younger sister Emma is the complete opposite. At 27, she's the shining star of our family, the golden child who can do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Ever since we were kids, Emma's been the dreamer, the one with big plans and even bigger demands. And me? I've always been the reliable one, the fixer, the one who gets called when something needs doing, or more often than not, paying for. When Emma got engaged to her boyfriend Matt last year, I'll admit I was happy for her. He seemed decent enough at first. Matt is the kind of guy who talks big, but never seems to follow through. His ideas are endless, but his accomplishments? Well, they're harder to spot. He flits between jobs, spends what little money he earns on hobbies and gadgets, and leaves Emma to handle the bills. She once laughed it off, saying, "That's just Matt being Matt," but to me it seemed like a disaster waiting to happen. Growing up, Emma always had my parents wrapped around her little finger. If she wanted something, she got it. Whether it was a last-minute party, a new gadget, or even extra tuition money after she'd burned through her savings. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the one who didn't ask for help, who worked hard, and who quietly picked up the slack when Emma made a mess. That's just how things were in our family. So when Emma announced her engagement, my parents acted like it was the second coming. They gushed and cooed like she'd won a Nobel Prize. I was happy for her, but the way they carried on, you'd think she'd found the cure for cancer. Then came the wedding planning. That's where things started to unravel. One evening, I got a call from my mom. She was in full-on mom mode, all sweetness and sunshine. "Hey, honey," she chirped. "Emma and I were just talking about her big day, and we thought it'd be nice to chat with you." "Sure," I said, figuring she wanted to talk colors, venues, or some other wedding detail I couldn't care less about. "Tell her to call me." "Well, actually," Mom hesitated, "we thought it'd be better to talk together." That should have been my first red flag. My mom rarely hesitates unless she knows I'm not going to like what she has to say. "What's going on?" I asked. "Well, you know how much this wedding means to Emma," she began, her tone suddenly cautious. "She's been dreaming about it forever, and she really wants it to be special." "Of course," I said. "That's great. I'm happy for her." Mom paused, and I could practically hear her rehearsing her next words in her head. "She's got so many ideas: a live band, custom invitations, a surprise for Matt during the ceremony. But weddings are expensive and, well, things are a little tight for her right now." I knew where this was going. "So what are you saying?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Emma was hoping you might be able to help out, financially, just with a few things. Nothing too big," she added quickly, like that would soften the blow. "Like what?" "Oh, you know," she said vaguely. "Maybe the venue deposit? Or part of the catering." The irony hit me hard. This wasn't about helping out. This was about footing the bill. "She really needs you," Mom added. "You've always been so responsible. We knew we could count on you to make her dream come true." It wasn't a compliment. It was a trap. A responsibility being foisted onto me because I didn't have a family of my own, tying me down. That phrase, "tying you down," has always made my blood boil. As if being single automatically means my money is free for the taking. "I'll think about it," I said, trying not to commit to anything. "Great," Mom said quickly, like she'd just closed a deal. "I'll let Emma know you're on board. This is going to mean so much to her." That's how it started. Innocent enough. A venue deposit here, a little catering cost there, but once you start saying yes, it doesn't stop. By the time the wedding rolled around, I drained my savings, maxed out a credit card, and picked up extra shifts to cover the rest. 50 grand. That's how much I ended up spending on my sister's special day. The first few payments didn't feel like a big deal. a couple of thousand here and there. It was for Emma's wedding after all, something she'd been dreaming of since we were kids. I told myself, this is a one-time thing. It's just money. You'll make it back. But once I started saying yes, it was like opening a floodgate. First, it was the venue deposit, then the catering, then the flowers, then the photographer, the live band, the dress. Oh, the dress. It cost more than my car. At every turn, there was another small favor that wasn't small at all. "You've always been so good with money," my mom would chime in. "You work so hard. This is such a big moment for Emma. Don't you want her to have the wedding she's always dreamed of?" Sure, I wanted Emma to have her dream wedding. But with every payment I made, I felt like I was being squeezed dry. My savings disappeared first, then the credit card balance climbed. I started picking up extra shifts, cutting back on meals out, and skipping anything that wasn't absolutely essential just to keep up. I told myself it was worth it. I was doing something good for my sister. Family helps family, right? But with each passing day, that phrase started to feel like a chain around my neck. A week before the wedding, Emma called me in a panic. "The band we wanted just raised their rates," she said, her voice frantic. "I know you've already done so much, Alex, but could you cover the difference? It's only $2,000, and I swear I'll pay you back." Of course, she didn't pay me back. But by then, I was too far in to stop. What's another $2,000 when you've already spent $48,000? Deep down, I knew the money wasn't coming back. The wedding itself was beautiful, at least. Emma looked like a princess, and everyone seemed to have a great time. Everyone except me. The moment I arrived at the venue, Mom cornered me. "Make sure you're around to help with the kids during the reception," she said. "No, please. No, thank you. Just an order, like I was unpaid staff." That's when it hit me. I wasn't a guest at this wedding. I was the bankroll, the help, the guy in the shadows who made it all happen while everyone else got to enjoy it. I sat at a table in the back, nursing a drink and watching everyone dance and laugh. And I wondered, how did I let it get this far? The days after the wedding were a blur. I was exhausted, financially and emotionally. But I told myself it was over. Emma and Matt were married. They'd settle into their new life, and I could finally start focusing on rebuilding mine. I should have known better. A month later, Emma called me. "Hey, big brother," she said, her voice casual. "I hate to ask, but we're running a little tight this month. Could you help us out with rent?" I froze. "What do you mean you're running tight? Didn't you get a bunch of money from the wedding gifts?" "Oh, well, yeah," she said, laughing like it was no big deal. "But we used most of that for the honeymoon. And, other stuff." "Other stuff," she said, like it was self-explanatory. I wanted to say no right then and there, but I hesitated. Emma sounded so casual about it, like this was just what brothers did. So, once again, I caved. I sent her enough to cover her rent, telling myself it was a one-time thing. It wasn't. The requests kept coming. One month it was rent. The next it was utility bills. At one point, she even asked me to cover a car payment because Matt had a slow week at work. Every time I started to push back, Emma would get upset. "You're acting like this is such a big deal," she'd say. "You know we're good for it." But they weren't. I never saw a dime of that money again. Meanwhile, I was eating ramen noodles and working extra shifts just to keep my head above water, while Emma posted pictures on social media of fancy dinners, weekend getaways, and new clothes. I tried to justify it to myself. This is temporary, I thought. She's my sister. She'll figure things out eventually. But deep down, I knew the truth. Emma wasn't figuring anything out. She was just using me as her safety net. Then came the family dinner. That's when everything came to a head. Family dinners were supposed to be casual, a chance to catch up, share a meal, and maybe laugh a little. But this one was different. I hadn't been to a family gathering in months, trying to avoid the endless guilt trips and money requests. But my parents wouldn't let it go. "It's been too long since we all sat down together," Mom said. "Emma and Matt will be there. Won't it be nice to catch up?" I wasn't thrilled, but I gave in. How bad could it be? When I walked into my parents' house, the atmosphere felt tense. Emma and Matt were already at the dining table, looking way too comfortable. "Hey, big spender," Emma said as soon as she saw me, her voice dripping with sarcasm. My blood pressure spiked instantly. I forced a smile and sat down. The small talk started, Mom and Emma chatting about hair appointments, the weather, Matt's new shoes. I stayed quiet, focusing on my plate, hoping the night would pass quickly. Then Emma dropped the bomb. "So, Matt and I have been thinking about buying a house," she said casually. My parents' faces lit up. "Oh, that's wonderful," Mom gushed. "A house! That's such a big step." "Yeah," Emma said, smiling. "We've been looking at a few places, but, houses aren't cheap. We'll definitely need some help with the down payment." She said it like it was no big deal, like it was just expected. I didn't say anything at first. I just nodded, waiting to see if she'd elaborate. But she didn't. She just looked at me, expectantly. My mom chimed in. "It's such a great time to buy," she said. "And they found this cute little place they love. It would mean so much to them if you could help." I finally sighed and looked up. "I just spent $50,000 on your wedding," I said, my voice steady. "Don't you think it's time you figured things out on your own?" The moment the words left my mouth, the room went dead silent. For a split second, Emma looked genuinely stunned. Then, the smug smile crept back onto her face. "Wow," she said, leaning back in her chair. "Way to ruin the mood, Alex." Matt shook his head, chuckling. "Seriously, man. We're not asking for millions. We thought you'd be happy to help." Happy? That word rattled around in my head, igniting something deep inside me. How could they possibly think I'd be happy to shell out even more money after everything I'd already sacrificed for them? Emma folded her arms, her tone turning sharp. "It's not like you have kids or a family to take care of. You don't really have responsibilities like the rest of us." That did it. Her words, so casual, so dismissive, cut straight to the core. All these years of sacrifice, of playing the role of the dependable one, and this was how they saw me. A guy with no real problems, no purpose, no value beyond my paycheck. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "You think I don't have responsibilities?" I said, my tone measured but cold. "Who do you think has been paying for all of yours?" Emma's smirk faltered for the briefest moment, but then she fired back. "Maybe if you weren't such a loser, you wouldn't be so bitter about helping family." The word loser hit me like a slap across the face. My hands clenched under the table as I tried to process what I'd just heard. A loser. That's what I was to her. Not the brother who had drained his savings, worked himself to exhaustion, and put his own dreams on hold to make her wedding happen. Just a loser. I glanced at my parents, searching for some kind of reaction, some sign that they were as horrified by Emma's words as I was. But my mom just stared at her plate, sipping her water like nothing had happened. My dad didn't even look up. Their silence was deafening, an unspoken agreement with Emma's insult. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "A loser, huh?" I said, my voice rising despite myself. Funny coming from someone who spent years living off my sacrifices like a free carnival ride. "You think it's easy being treated like an ATM while you sit back and judge me?" Emma's face flushed, but she didn't interrupt. I kept going, the words spilling out like a dam had burst. "You know what? Yes, I'm done. I've spent years bailing you out, working extra hours, sacrificing my own life so you can have yours. And now you want more? Fine, but you're not getting it from me. You figure it out on your own." The room was so quiet. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Emma stared at me, her expression unreadable. My mom finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're being dramatic, Alex," she said. "We're family. We help each other." That phrase, "we help each other," snapped something inside me. "No," I said firmly, standing up. "I help, you take. That's not family. That's using someone." "Wow," Emma said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're really going to act like this after everything I've been through? You're so selfish." Matt chimed in, shaking his head. Yeah, man, that's messed up. We're not asking for much. I pointed at his sneakers, a shiny new pair that probably cost $300. Not much. I've spent over $50,000 on you two. I've paid your rent, your bills, your wedding, and now you're sitting here in designer shoes asking me for more. What else do you want? My soul. My mom looked like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. My dad stayed silent, staring at his plate like this was none of his concern. I'm done, I said, grabbing my coat. Don't call me, don't text me, and don't even think about asking me for money. You're on your own. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out the door, slamming it behind me. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. That night, as I drove home in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, the anger slowly faded. In its place was a deep, hollow ache. I wasn't just mad, I was hurt. Hurt that my own family, the people who were supposed to have my back, saw me as nothing more than a wallet. The next morning, my phone started blowing up. Texts from Emma ranged from passive-aggressive to outright hostile. Thanks for ruining dinner, by the way. You're seriously going to leave your own sister hanging? Wow, you're such a bitter, selfish person. No wonder you're alone. I didn't reply. I wasn't going to engage in her pity party. Then my mom called. I let it go to voicemail, but her message popped up immediately. Honey, it's Mom. We need to talk. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you need to apologize to Emma. She's been so upset since last night. Right. I was the one who needed to apologize. Of course. The next voicemail was from my dad. You went too far, Alex. That was uncalled for. Emma's been through a lot, and you just walked out like that. You're better than this. Better than what, exactly? Letting my sister bleed me dry without a word of protest? I didn't call him back either. A few days later, Emma found a new way to push my buttons. She started a GoFundMe. The title? Help Us Build Our Future. The description? A sob story about how unexpected circumstances had left her and Matt struggling to afford their dream home. She didn't name me directly, but anyone who knew our family could read between the lines. The campaign raised $75. I laughed harder than I had in months. For once, people weren't buying her nonsense. But Emma wasn't done. Not by a long shot. For a brief moment, I thought the GoFundMe stunt might be the end of it. Emma had embarrassed herself publicly, and with only $75 raised, it seemed like she was finally out of tricks. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that Emma never gives up when she thinks she can squeeze something out of someone. About a week later, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello? Hi, this is Mr. Parker, Emma's landlord, said the voice on the other end. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. My stomach sank. What's this about? Well, he began, sounding uncomfortable. Emma hasn't paid rent for the past 2 months. When I reached out, she told me you usually handle it for her and that I should speak with you. I clenched my jaw, feeling the familiar anger boiling up. She said what? She mentioned you've always covered her bills when things get tight, he said, his tone almost apologetic. I just wanted to confirm before moving forward with any late fees. She lied, I said flatly. I'm not covering her rent, or anything else for that matter. She's not my responsibility. There was a pause on the line before he responded. I see. Thank you for clarifying. As soon as I hung up, the doorbell buzzed. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Sure enough, there was Emma, standing there with that same entitled expression I'd seen too many times before. I debated not answering, but she kept buzzing relentlessly. With a deep breath, I opened the door. What do you want, Emma? She didn't waste any time. You can't just cut me off like this. I'm your sister. Yes, I can, I replied, keeping my tone calm. And I already did. Her face twisted into a mix of desperation and anger. How am I supposed to pay rent? Or buy groceries? What am I supposed to do? Figure it out, I said, crossing my arms. Get a job, make a budget, do what the rest of us do. I have a job, she snapped. Then maybe stop spending all your money on designer clothes and takeout, I shot back. You've had plenty of chances to get it together, Emma. I'm not your safety net anymore. You're being cruel, she said, tears starting to well up. I'm your sister. Family is supposed to help each other. I've been helping you for years, I said, my voice firm. But instead of appreciating it, you've taken advantage of me. I'm done. I shut the door before she could respond, leaving her standing there on the other side. I leaned against the door, closing my eyes and exhaling deeply. The guilt tried to creep in, but I pushed it away. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. A few days later, I got served with court papers. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake, but no, it was real. Emma was suing me. Her claim, that I'd made a verbal agreement to support her financially and had caused her emotional distress by cutting her off. She even included fake screenshots of text messages where I supposedly promised to pay her bills. I couldn't believe it. My own sister was dragging me to court because I wouldn't bankroll her life anymore. My parents, of course, took her side. This wouldn't have happened if you just worked things out with her, my mom said when she called to lecture me. She's desperate, Alex, my dad added. You're making it worse by being stubborn. She's suing me, I shouted into the phone. How is that okay? Just settle, my mom pleaded. It'll make things easier for everyone. No, I said firmly. I'm not giving her a dime. I hired a lawyer and started preparing to fight the case. As ridiculous as her claims were, I wasn't about to let her win. The whole thing was a circus. Emma played the victim perfectly, crying about how she'd relied on my promises and how my betrayal had left her struggling. But my lawyer was sharp. We presented receipts for every expense I'd covered, wedding deposits, rent payments, bills, and showed how much money I'd already spent on her. When her fake screenshots came up, my lawyer pointed out the inconsistencies, dismantling her entire case. The judge wasn't impressed with Emma's lies. He dismissed the case and even slapped her with a fine for wasting the court's time. I thought that would be the end of it, but my parents couldn't resist one last guilt trip. You didn't have to take it that far, my mom said. She's your sister. She sued me, I replied, my voice steady. What did you expect me to do? Roll over and hand her more money? They didn't have an answer. After the court case, I tried to move on. I blocked Emma on everything, social media, my phone, email. I even stopped answering my parents' calls. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. No more frantic texts asking for money. No more guilt trips. Just silence. But Emma wasn't ready to let go. A mutual friend, Emily, reached out to me one day. I was at a family gathering, and Emma was telling everyone how you abandoned her, she said. She's really laying it on thick, Alex. She told everyone you promised to pay her bills and then just ghosted her. I rolled my eyes. Of course she did. She's also been calling extended family members asking for money, Emily added. I think she thought the lawsuit would scare you into caving. Well, it didn't, I said, more tired than angry. Emma's attempts to twist the story only strengthened my resolve. I wasn't going to let her or anyone else pull me back into the chaos I'd worked so hard to escape. After the court case, I thought I could finally put the whole mess behind me. Emma had embarrassed herself, my parents' attempts to guilt me had fallen flat, and I'd made it clear I wasn't going to bankroll anyone's life anymore. But deep down, I knew my family didn't work that way. They wouldn't just let it go. It started with small ripples. My parents called a few times, leaving voicemails I refused to answer. Mom's voice always carried the same tone, hurt, pleading, and loaded with guilt. Alex, it's Mom. We really need to talk about everything. Emma's struggling, and you're not acting like yourself. Please call me. Dad was more direct, but no less frustrating. You need to fix this, son. You're better than this. She's family. I didn't reply to either of them. I wasn't about to let myself get dragged back into the drama. A few weeks passed, and I started to feel the weight lift. Blocking Emma and ignoring my parents' calls gave me space I didn't realize I needed. For the first time in years, I could focus on myself. I was rebuilding my savings, taking time for hobbies I'd neglected, and even considering what I wanted for my future. Something I hadn't done in what felt like forever. Then, one evening, the phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed it was Emily, the mutual friend who told me about Emma's pity party at the family gathering. "Hey," she said when I picked up, her voice cautious. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you this, but I figured you'd want to know." "What now?" I asked, bracing myself. "Your parents are in trouble. Apparently, Emma maxed out their credit cards, and they can't keep up with the payments. They're thinking about asking you for help." I let out a bitter laugh. "Of course they are. Why am I not surprised?" "I just thought you should know," Emily said gently. "It sounds like things are really bad over there." "Yeah, well, they brought it on themselves," I replied. "They enabled her for years. They let her walk all over them, and now they're dealing with the consequences." Emily didn't argue. She just sighed. "I get it, Alex. I do. Just take care of yourself, okay?" "Thanks, Emily," I said before hanging up. It didn't take long for the call to come. My mom was the first to reach out. "Alex, honey, we need to talk," she started, her voice shaky. "It's about Emma." I didn't bother pretending to be surprised. "What about her?" She maxed out our credit cards," Mom admitted, her tone dripping with regret. "We didn't know until the bills came. We're drowning here, Alex. The interest is piling up and we can't keep up. We thought maybe you could help us out just this once." I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar wave of anger and exhaustion wash over me. "Why would you give her access to your credit cards?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. "She said it was just for groceries and gas," Mom said, her voice breaking. "We didn't think she'd—" "You didn't think?" I interrupted. "After everything she's done, you didn't think she'd take advantage of you? Are you serious?" "She's our daughter," Mom said defensively. "What were we supposed to do?" "And I'm your son," I shot back. "But that hasn't stopped you from treating me like a walking paycheck." There was a long pause before Mom spoke again. "We just thought maybe you could help us out. We'll pay you back, I promise." "No," I said firmly. "This is your mess. You enabled her. You let her walk all over you. And now you're dealing with the consequences. I'm not bailing you out." "Please," Mom begged. "We don't know what else to do." "I'm done, Mom," I said, my voice unwavering. "Don't call me again unless it's to apologize." I hung up and immediately blocked her number, along with my dad's. I knew they'd keep trying to pull me back in if I gave them even an inch. The silence that followed was deafening, but it was exactly what I needed. For years I'd been suffocating under the weight of my family's expectations and manipulations. Cutting them off felt like ripping off a bandage, painful but necessary. I heard bits and pieces through the grapevine. Emma was still living with my parents, draining what little money they had left. My parents were struggling, but they couldn't bring themselves to hold Emma accountable, and me. I was finally free. For the first time in years, I could breathe. I wasn't just surviving. I was living. I started saving for a house, something I'd always dreamed of but had never been able to prioritize because of Emma's endless demands. A few months later, I closed on a small, modest home. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Something no one could take away from me. The last time I heard from Emma was about 2 weeks after I bought my house. She called from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hi, Alex," she said, her voice hesitant. "What do you want?" I asked, already tired. I wanted to say I'm sorry," she said, sniffing like she'd been crying. "For everything." I paused, caught off guard. "Go on." "I know I've been difficult, and I know I've asked for a lot," she said quickly, "but I'm really struggling, and I don't know what to do." I sighed, recognizing the old pattern, the fake apology, the attempt to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her. "I'm sorry you're struggling," I said firmly, "but I'm not going to fix this for you. You've made your choices. Now you have to live with them." "You're being so cold," she snapped, the tears disappearing from her voice. How can you just turn your back on me like this? Because I've spent my whole life cleaning up your messes, I said, and I'm done. Goodbye, Emma. I hung up and blocked the number, knowing it would be the last time we spoke. The day I hung up on Emma for the last time felt like the end of an era. I'd spent my whole life playing the role of the dutiful son and the responsible brother, and now, for the first time, I was free. But that freedom came with a strange emptiness, an ache that lingered in the background of my newfound peace. Cutting ties with your family isn't something anyone prepares you for. It's messy and painful, even when you know it's the right thing to do. At first, I questioned myself constantly. What if they're right? What if I'm the selfish one? Those thoughts would creep in during quiet moments, nagging at me like old wounds refusing to heal. But every time I started to doubt, I reminded myself of everything I'd sacrificed for them, all the money, the time, the energy. And for what? More demands, more insults, more guilt trips. No, I wasn't selfish. I was finally setting boundaries, something I should have done years ago. Months passed, and with each day, the weight on my shoulders grew lighter. I threw myself into rebuilding my life, focusing on the things I'd neglected for so long. My savings account started to recover, and for the first time in years, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I even treated myself to a few things I'd always talked myself out of. Nothing extravagant, just little joys that reminded me life didn't have to be all about sacrifice. The house I bought became my sanctuary. It was small and simple, but it was mine. No one could take it from me, and no one could guilt me into sacrificing it for their dreams. I spent weekends fixing it up, painting the walls, planting a small garden out back. It felt good to create something for myself, to invest in a future that wasn't tied to someone else's expectations. Every so often, I'd hear bits and pieces about Emma and my parents through mutual friends or distant relatives. Emma was still living with them, still draining what little they had left. My parents were struggling, but they refused to hold her accountable. Part of me felt sorry for them, but another part, maybe a bigger part, knew they'd brought this on themselves. They'd enabled her for years, turned a blind eye to her behavior, and now they were paying the price. I stopped answering questions about them whenever they came up. I don't know, I'd say when someone asked how they were doing. We don't talk anymore. Most people didn't push, but the ones who did often gave me a look like I was the villain of the story. I let them think whatever they wanted. I wasn't going to waste energy defending myself to people who didn't know the full story. One day, a mutual friend sent me a message. "Did you hear about Emma?" they asked. "No," I replied, my stomach tightening. "What happened?" "She's telling people you abandoned the family," they wrote. "She's saying you've left your parents to struggle and that you're selfish for not helping them with their bills." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Let her say whatever she wants. I don't care anymore. And I meant it. Emma could spin whatever story she needed to make herself feel better. I was done trying to control the narrative. The people who mattered, the ones who truly knew me, understood the truth. That was enough. The real breakthrough came a few weeks later. I was sitting on my back porch, sipping coffee and watching the sun set over my tiny garden, when it hit me. I wasn't angry anymore. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the simmering resentment that had lived in the pit of my stomach for so long. I wasn't carrying the weight of my family's demands, their expectations, or their judgments. I was free. It wasn't just the physical distance or the financial freedom. It was the emotional release. I'd spent years defining myself by what I could do for others, by how much I could give, and how much I could endure. Letting go of that identity felt like shedding a second skin. It was liberating in a way I couldn't fully explain. I won't lie and say it's been easy. There are still moments when I miss the idea of a family, the closeness, the support, the unconditional love we're all taught to expect. But then I remind myself that my family wasn't any of those things. They weren't supportive. They weren't loving. They were toxic. And walking away from them wasn't just a choice, it was survival. These days, I've started building my own version of family. It's made up of friends who show up when I need them, who listen without judgment, and who give without expecting anything in return. It's not traditional, but it's real, and it's enough. Looking back, I've learned something I wish I'd known sooner. Family isn't about DNA. It's about mutual respect, love, and boundaries. If those things aren't there, then all you're left with is an empty obligation, a chain disguised as a bond. Letting go of that chain was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also the best decision I've ever made. I've reclaimed my life, my peace, and my future. And for the first time, I'm not living for anyone else. I'm living for me. Here's to moving forward. Story 2. The headline of the tale is, "My fiancé made fun of my career at her office party." In front of everyone, I called it quits on the engagement. Hello everyone. Prior to starting today's video, I need your assistance. One of the greatest ways you can help us out is to subscribe, since we've observed the channel is losing some of its popularity. It's simple, free, and helps us continue to provide you with amazing content. Your assistance is much appreciated. Together, let's continue to build this channel. Many thanks. Let's begin the video now. Hello Reddit. I finally decided to share this after sitting on it for a while, trying to figure out what happened. I am an electrician by trade. I will not sugarcoat the situation. I adore my work. Of all, it's hardly the sort of thing that people boast about at elegant dinner parties or include in movies. However, I've been doing manual labor since I was a youngster, and I'm skilled at it. Nor did I just happen to stumble across this. I put forth a lot of effort to get here. I worked long hours as an apprentice to get experience, attended trade school for years, and took on side jobs to pay for my equipment. In a sector where one's reputation can make or ruin one's career, I had to prove myself at every turn. It's really exciting to fix something damaged and watch it function again, and I've spent many hours learning circuits, panels, and wiring. In addition, I've made a respectable living from it. I manage my own little business, doing everything from creative lighting installations for companies to house maintenance. Reaching the point where I could manage my own business wasn't simple, but it was worthwhile. In addition to having devoted customers and a nice truck, I'm currently saving money for my first home. Although it's not particularly ostentatious, I wouldn't trade it for anything because it's honest work. Though I'll admit that I've had to deal with people who despise what I do, I've always been proud of where I am. You are aware of the kind. I believed that my fiancée, Lisa, a 30-year-old woman, wasn't one of those people who believe that true success entails working in a cubicle or holding a long title like senior executive. I've been dating Lisa for roughly 4 years. She works in corporate marketing, a field I've always tried to respect, but don't really understand. I felt like a normal guy standing next to a magazine cover because of her ambition, drive, and polish. She is the type of person who organizes everything, including our 5-year goals and weekend brunches. That was something I liked about her. I believed that we were mutually balanced. She is the polished go-getter, and I am the hands-on problem solver. Initially, Lisa would express her admiration for my work ethic. She would say things like, "You're so good with your hands," or "I love how passionate you are about what you do." It's amazing. I accepted that since it was nice to have someone support me, especially someone like Lisa, who made the effort to find me even though she could have chosen any kind of suit and tie. She once told me, "Because you're a real man," in response to my question about why she was so interested in me. But now that I'm looking back, I think there were signs that she didn't really respect me or what I do. It's just that I ignored them. For example, there was this one time when we were talking about future goals, and I said I wanted to expand my business, maybe hire a couple of guys to work under me, so I wasn't always on the job myself. Her response, "That's cute, babe. You'd be like a little boss." I laughed it off at the time, but now it feels like one of those comments that wasn't as innocent as it seemed. Then there was the way she talked about her own career. She'd go on and on about how hard it was to get where she is, how she had to prove herself in a male-dominated industry, and how she's always working twice as hard as everyone else. Don't get me wrong, I respected the hell out of her hustle. But looking back, I realized she never really asked about my work in the same way. Like, she never cared about the struggles I had running my own business, or the times I had to work 12-hour days in someone's attic during a heat wave just to make ends meet. Still, I never thought it was a big deal. I figured we just had different ways of showing support. She was all about big flashy gestures, posting pictures of us with captions like "so proud of my guy" while I was more low-key. I'd show up to her work events, listen to her vent about her boss, and make sure she had dinner waiting. When she got home late, to me, that was enough. Things started to feel off earlier this year, though. Lisa got a promotion, and suddenly her life became all about networking and corporate events. She started talking about her colleagues constantly. This guy who's a rising star in the industry, that woman who's such a powerhouse. I noticed she didn't mention me as much anymore when I asked about it. She brushed it off, saying, "You're not part of that world, babe. It's not a big deal." That stung a little, but I let it go. I figured she was just caught up in the excitement of her new role. Then came the co-workers' holiday party. Lisa had been talking about it for weeks. She kept saying it was a big deal and that it was important. "I come with her. You'll love it," she said. "You'll get to see the people I work with and the world I live in." I wasn't exactly thrilled about spending a night with a bunch of corporate types, but I figured it was important to her, and I wanted to be by her side. So I agreed. As the date got closer, I started to feel more and more out of my element. Lisa was planning everything down to the last detail. What we'd wear, what time we'd arrive, even what kind of conversations I should prepare for. "Just talk about your business," she said. "People love hearing about small businesses that should have been my first red flag. Why would I need to prepare to talk about what I do?" But again, I brushed it off. I wanted to be there for her, even if it meant stepping into a world that felt completely foreign to me. The night of the party, I put on my one good suit and did my best to clean up. Lisa looked incredible, like she always does, in this sleek black dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. When we got to the venue, I realized just how out of place I was. The place was decked out with fancy decorations. Everyone was dressed to the nines, moving through the room like they were on a runway. I was trying my best to play along, even though this whole thing feels like stepping onto a set of The Office. But way less funny and way more fake. People are walking around in their overpriced suits and shoes talking about brand initiatives and quarterly projections. Meanwhile, I'm just trying to keep my tie from choking me to death. Lisa's in her element, though. She's laughing, working the room and introducing me to everyone like she's the star of the show. Honestly, I was kind of proud of her at first. I mean, she's good at what she does, and it's obvious her colleagues respect her. But the more she introduced me to people, the more it started to feel off. It started small. Every time she'd introduce me, she'd throw in some little comment that felt like a jab, like, "This is my fiancé. He's an electrician. He keeps things running around the house." Or, "If you ever need someone to fix your outlets, he's your guy." She'd laugh, and so would they. But I wasn't laughing. I brushed it off the first couple of times, telling myself she was just nervous or trying to be funny. But after the fifth or sixth time, I started to wonder if this was just how she talked about me behind my back. Anyway, Lisa and I were standing with a group of her colleagues when one guy, a real smug-looking dude in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my truck, asked me what I do for a living. I smiled and told him, "I'm an electrician. I run my own business. Simple and plain." Before he could say anything, Lisa jumped in. "Oh, he's amazing with his hands," she said with this overly sweet tone that immediately made me cringe. "He's like my little handyman at home. Anytime something breaks, he's on it. Isn't that adorable?" Adorable. That word hit hard. The way she said it wasn't affectionate. It was condescending. Like I was some kind of pet she brought to show off. The group burst out laughing, and I just stood there trying to keep my face neutral. Inside, I was fuming. I wanted to say something, but I didn't want to make a scene, so I just smiled awkwardly and nodded like I was in on the joke, but I wasn't. I was done. The rest of the night didn't get better. Every time we talked to someone new, Lisa found a new way to put me down. Whether it was calling me, her fix-it guy, or joking about how I probably didn't get their world of corporate marketing. At one point, I heard her telling someone, "Oh yes, he's my little wires and pliers person like Bob the Builder, but less ambitious." I was standing there thinking, did she just reduce my job to a joke? I let it slip, attempting to maintain the peace, but it didn't end there. What really ticked me off was how nonchalant she was about it. Like, she didn't even notice she was insulting me. Or worst, she noticed and just didn't care. The way she looked at me when she made those statements, it wasn't love or pride. It was a pity. Like I was some small-town man who got lucky to be with her and should just be grateful for the worst part. Everyone else appeared to gobble it up. They were laughing along with her, like her comments were the greatest thing they'd ever heard. And why wouldn't they? In their view, I was just the blue-collar man following along with the corporate queen. They didn't know me or what I'd constructed for myself. All they saw was what Lisa was presenting them, someone to laugh at. By the time the toast came, I was already tuned out. Lisa got up in front of everyone, looking like she controlled the room, and started praising her crew for their hard work. I was partially listening, just trying to get through the night without losing it. When she suddenly said, "And I want to give a special shout-out to my fiancé," I looked up, thinking, maybe she's going to redeem herself, but nothing. "He's not really a corporate person," she remarked, beaming like she was going to unleash the best joke of the night. "But if anyone's dishwasher stops working, he's your guy." Laughter broke out throughout the room. As 100 pairs of eyes turned to me, I sat still. I had a burning sensation on my face. I turned to face Lisa in the hopes that she would see how embarrassed I was, but she was too preoccupied to notice. She was grinning as if she had just won a prize for the most amusing toast. It was more than I could handle. Excusing myself, I went outdoors to breathe. My chest felt constricted, and my hands were trembling. I kept repeating her words in my mind, each one becoming more powerful than the last. Not a businessman. For power outages, are you your man? What on earth had just occurred? There was no toast there. The takedown was that. I'm standing outside this absurdly opulent location, attempting to cool off by inhaling the chilly air. I can still hear the laughter that filled the room as Lisa's toast was served. I'm not sure if I'm more upset or ashamed, or perhaps a combination of the two. I kept asking myself, has she always seen me like this, as convenient as those handymen she hired? Lisa emerges from the house a few minutes later. Her face is displaying a large, oblivious smile. "You're there, as if I were a lost child," she says. "You slip out, but why?" I try not to become angry as I stare at her, but I can already feel it building. Can you imagine how embarrassing that was? She blinks, obviously taken by surprise. "What are you discussing?" "The toast," I reply, raising my voice slightly. "In front of your whole office, you essentially make fun of me." Lisa rolls her eyes as if I'm the one who's acting irrationally. "Come on, please." It was only a joke. Everyone found it amusing. Yes, as they are unfamiliar with me. I lost my temper. They just know what you said to them, that their dishwashers can be fixed by me, a non-corporate man. How insulting is it? Do you even recognize it? She lets out a sigh as if speaking to a young kid. "You're going overboard." The depth wasn't that great. All I wanted to do was lighten the atmosphere, reduce the tension. I took a big breath and attempted to explain, even though I could feel my hand clenching at my sides. "I've put forth a ton of effort to get here, Lisa. I own my own company. I earn a respectable living." All of that was condensed into a punchline by you. What do you suppose my feelings are about that? Rather than offering an apology or even making an effort to comprehend, Lisa gave me an irritated face while crossing her arms. "I'm not sure why you're taking this so personally. I didn't say anything false, really. You work as an electrician. The work isn't very glamorous. There it is. The reality. It's simple." Stunned, I look at her. "Wow," I said. "So that's your true opinion of me? As if I were a mere toolbox-wielding person, fortunate enough to be with you." "That's not what I said. You're forcing me to say things. I'm only trying to tell you that you need to learn to accept humor. It's not about me here. It's about your lack of confidence." She began to shout. My lack of confidence. My blood began to boil. Right now, it has nothing to do with my insecurity. It's because you don't value me or my work. Are you even aware of how patronizing you came across tonight? "You always sound so condescending." Lisa's expression grew tough. "What do you know? Perhaps I do believe you're exaggerating. Perhaps you ought to think about the reasons behind your defensiveness regarding your work. You wouldn't be bothered by a little teasing if you had self-confidence." I realized then that this was more than just a disagreement. This is an underlying issue. This is Lisa. I was not respected by her. She hasn't either. I try to steady my voice by taking a deep breath. Lisa, you know what? I am no longer able to do this. She squinted. What are you going to do? I said, gesturing between us. This connection. I'm finished. Lisa looked at me as if I had suddenly developed a second head. Then she lets out a little, incredulous laugh. Are you serious? Are you truly going to end our relationship over a joke? It goes beyond the jest. I spoke aggressively. It's your perception of me. The way you have always seen me. Lisa, you don't respect me. You haven't. Furthermore, I refuse to live my entire life being viewed as inferior to you, simply because I'm not an office worker. Her face changed from incredulous to angry. Are you serious now? Are you even aware of your absurdity? Do you believe that your small company of repairing people's wiring makes you so unique? Guess what, though? It isn't that remarkable. Although her remarks were severe, they confirmed my choice. I offered her the engagement ring after removing it from my finger. I wish you success in locating someone you truly admire. I spoke strongly and calmly. She gazed at the ring as if it were about to burst in her grasp. She said, You're making a big mistake. Nobody else will tolerate your brittle ego. All I could say was, maybe not. But at least I'll be able to respect myself. After that, I left her standing out in the cold with the ring still in her hand and turned to go back inside the party to get my belongings. The noise of laughter and talking hit me like a wall as soon as I returned to the party to get my coat. There were still people in the room, but I could see them glancing at me. I was certain it would cause a stir. I honestly didn't give a damn. For the following 5 weeks, let them discuss it. Allow them to analyze each detail. I wanted Lisa and everyone there to remember this moment. She had been ripping me down all night. I reached for my coat, and now it was my chance to go on my terms. Behind me, I heard Lisa's heels click sharply. I was aware that she would not permit me to depart without a confrontation. Will you actually do this? She gave a hiss. She looked around anxiously to make sure nobody was listening. In the public eye, slowly, I turned and met her gaze. I could sense all of her co-workers' interested looks. People's conversations were becoming quieter as they paid attention. You did this previously, Lisa, I said, remaining composed but raising my voice loud enough for anybody in the vicinity to hear you cross the line and make fun of me in front of everyone. I'm simply going to go before things worsen. Her eyes narrowed into a scowl after briefly widening. She spat out, Don't be so dramatic, and grabbed my arm so hard that my jacket wrinkled. She attempted to remain calm, but her nails sank into my sleeve. Nobody even took attention. You're exaggerating this situation. I released my arm and stepped back. Really? After your brief toast, I'm very certain that half the crowd wasn't laughing with you, so I spoke louder. You ensured that they were making fun of me. That was not the case. She yelled, raising her voice slightly to get more attention. Around us, the buzz of discussion slowed down. People were no longer even acting as though they weren't paying attention. She argued that it was humorous, which is why they were laughing. Anger caused her cheeks to flush. It is you who is making this a major issue. Stabilizing myself, I inhaled and let the stillness to linger for a while. Lisa, I spoke aggressively. I was made into a joke by you. Your lack of regard for me was made quite evident. Now when I'm unhappy, you're acting like I'm insane. Right now, can you even hear yourself? Her cheeks flushed, but not because she was embarrassed. This was unadulterated anger. She folded her arms. Everything I said is being misrepresented by you, she fired back. I wanted you to be included. You ought to express gratitude to me for including you in the discussion, rather than pouting like a kid. Thank you. I wasn't included. You made fun of me. You gave the impression that I was a simpleton who could just fix your lights. Lisa, I'm not included in it. That is discrediting me in order to boost your self-esteem. A voice interrupted Lisa before she could reply. Hello? How are things doing over here? I turned to see a woman in a sharp suit, one of her co-workers, holding and seemed uneasy. Lisa turned to her and flashed the most phony grin I've ever seen. She responded hurriedly, Oh, it's okay. Just a little misunderstanding. She raised her voice by an octave. The woman looked from one of us to the other, obviously not persuaded. She gave me a pitying glance and then walked away, saying, Well, if you need anything. The moment Lisa's coworker turned away, her smile vanished. "Can you see your actions?" Her voice was dripping with hatred as she shouted. "In front of my entire office, you're making me seem foolish." I couldn't contain my laughter. The room echoed with a sour sound. I shook my head and replied, "I'm embarrassing you. You treated me like a joke the entire night, and now you're preoccupied with your appearance. It's really wealthy." I couldn't resist laughing, a scathing noise that broke the tension. "I feel ashamed." "You?" Shaking my head, I said, "You treated me like a joke the entire night, and now you're preoccupied with your appearance." Incredibly so. I caught a glimpse of a tall man standing close to the door, observing us. He had a familiar appearance. Then I saw it was Lisa's supervisor. Although he remained silent, it was obvious that he was listening because of the way he crossed his arms and leaned slightly forward. Lisa also saw him. Her entire manner changed, and her face went pale. Could we simply discuss this at a later time? Her voice grew quieter all of a sudden. "You're creating a commotion." I thought it was precisely what I wanted, so I shook my head. "No, Lisa, this will not be done later. Right now, we're doing it. I refuse to live my entire life with someone who believes they are superior to me. Simply because I'm not an office worker. I'm worthy of better. More than you?" Lisa's gaze shifted between her employer, myself, and the increasing number of individuals feigning inattention. "All right." Her voice sounded almost like venom as she spoke. "Leave. But when you realize that no one else will tolerate your brittle ego, don't come to me in tears." I shook my head and couldn't help but smirk. "I'm crying for you. I take it you're kidding? Finding someone who appreciates me won't be a problem for me." I didn't actually say it aloud. I didn't have to. As I stared at her, allowing her words to linger in the air, my expression and my silence spoke for themselves. I had no intention of becoming like her. Rather, I turned to go. I remarked, "Good luck finding someone who will put up with you. People, have fun at the celebration." As I turned and headed for the door behind me, I said over my shoulder, "Like ripples in a pond," I could hear the whispers moving around the room. As I went by, I heard people whispering, looking at each other, and catching bits of their discussions. "Have you noticed that? Why on earth was it happening?" I didn't glance back, even though I thought she was a bit much. I didn't have to. I was aware of the harm done. Lisa desired to command attention. She had it now, as the woman who was called out in front of everyone, not as the party's queen. Let them speak. I felt lighter than I have in years by the time I got to my car. It felt great to stand up for myself. Lisa was free to tell her narrative as she pleased, but I and everyone else who witnessed what transpired recognized the truth. Following the celebration, the days were chaotic. In a nutshell, Lisa continued to contact and text me. From, "Can we just talk about this?" to full on, they varied. "You're behaving like a kid," and all the other extremes. None of them received a response from me. To be honest, I needed room. How could someone who I believed loved and respected me treat me like a joke? I had to find out what the devil had just occurred. Lisa, however, was not the kind to sit quietly. Oh no. On the third day, I began receiving messages from friends we had in common. It seems that she wasn't satisfied with simply blowing up my phone. She had to ensure that everyone else was aware of her side of the tale. "You freaked out over nothing," she says. "She's making it sound like you stormed out because you're too sensitive to handle a joke," one of my pals wrote me. I received screenshots from Lisa's social media accounts from another person. It was right there in the open. Because some people can't handle a strong woman with a sense of humor, she avoided a bullet in this article. Her buddies were talking her up in the comments. "You're worthy of better. He sounds very insecure. Goodbye." Uneasy. I was annoyed every time I saw that term, which kept popping up. I wasn't insecure. I was worn out. I'm sick of being minimized. I'm sick of being viewed as insufficient, as I didn't belong in her idealized business environment. After a few days, I received a message that completely stopped me in my tracks. It came from a colleague of Lisa's. Someone who had attended the party but whom I hardly knew. "Hey," she said. I just wanted to reach out and apologize for laughing at that toast. To be honest, I always felt Lisa spoke strangely about you. It's as if she was settling for you. It wasn't until the other night that I realized how horrible it was. That wasn't fair to you. That validated what I had begun to suspect. This was not an isolated incident. For a long time, Lisa had been demeaning me. Most likely from the start, I considered ourselves on an equal footing. Partners. I was simply the man with the tools, though, to her. Someone she could manipulate and make jokes about when she felt like it. I began mentally reliving our whole relationship, analyzing each strange moment. She told me, "He's not your typical corporate guy, but he's great with his hands," when she first presented me to her parents, or when she confided in her pals. "Yes, he has a business, but it's not as big or demanding as mine." How could I have missed it? How could I have missed the fact that Mom never took pride in me, never shown me any real respect? A week or so later, the true icing on the cake arrived. Jen, Lisa's best friend, called me. I had always been cool with Jen. Although we weren't particularly close, we got along just fine. I assumed she could be calling to mediate a conflict or something when her name appeared on my phone. However, no, Jen said. "I just thought you should know. Lisa has been claiming that she chose you because she believed you would be simple to manage. You would feel too fortunate to have her," she added, "so she didn't think you'd ever leave her." Did she say that, really? Even though I knew the answer, I still asked. "Yes," Jen said. At first, I didn't want to believe it, but after the party, I did. "I apologize, dude. You're worthy of better." I thanked her, but to be honest, I wasn't sure how to react. Even though I was already over Lisa, hearing it was like a kick in the face. She was treating me like some charity case, and all the while I felt like I was creating a life with someone who considered me as an equal. My life seemed to flip a switch after the dust cleared. I was done with Lisa. No more phone calls, texts, phony excuses, or attempts to change the facts. On my end, things were looking better. Since Lisa wasn't into rustic vacations, I decided to sell my engagement ring and use the proceeds to schedule a trip to the mountains, a destination I'd always wanted to see but never got around to since I immersed myself into my business and took on additional projects. It turns out that seeing the stars while sitting by a campfire is far more enjoyable than listening to others discuss brand synergy over little appetizers. I had plenty of time to consider what I wanted and didn't want throughout that trip. I came to the realization that I had allowed Lisa to determine my value based on her flimsy standards and had spent far too much time attempting to fit in. That was no longer the case. Then the final slice of karma arrived. A month or so following the celebration, rumor had it that her supervisor had taken notice of her antics at the party and her subsequent behavior. Evidently, the event moved up the ladder after several of her coworkers began discussing it. At work, she has been quite nervous. I was informed by one of her coworkers. She seems to be annoyed by the fact that others are discussing her behind her back. Last week, she even lost her temper with someone at a meeting, which is unusual for her. Lisa stated, "I worked my ass off to get where I am, and now it's like one stupid night is all anyone remembers." In a text message that another mutual acquaintance shared, it seemed to me that the understanding was beginning to set in. I wasn't just lost to her. People who used to respect her were suddenly doubting her judgment, which hurt her professional connections. Although I was not given all the information, I did hear that Lisa's self-representation did not sit well with the higher authorities. Let's just say she wasn't pleased about being passed up for a promotion she had been vying for. I'm not going to lie. Knowing that retribution had finally come up with her gave me a little sense of satisfaction. Her attitude, her need to undermine others in order to elevate herself, and the fact that it seemed like affirmation were the reasons I didn't want her to fail. It was more than simply a relationship issue. She was that person. I'm in a lot better position now, though. I'm happy that I broke things off before getting married and starting a family, and I feel like I made the correct choice every day. In an effort to share my knowledge and inspire others to pursue the trade, I have grown my company, improved my equipment, and even begun instructing aspiring electricians in an evening session. Has changed the game for me. In addition, I've gotten back in touch with people I lost touch with when I was with Lisa. In retrospect, I see how much of my existence revolved around her friends, hobbies, and aspirations. It feels amazing to be concentrating on what brings me joy right now. Since the split, I haven't heard directly from Lisa. She is still sharing her cryptic remarks and likely claiming to be the victim to anybody who would listen. But to be honest, I don't give a damn. To be honest, leaving that relationship was the finest decision I've ever made. It was more than the toast or the celebration. The realization that I should be with someone who appreciates me for who I am, not for how I fit into their story, was the key. One thing I've taken away from all of this is that relationships require respect. You shouldn't strive to stay with someone who doesn't respect you, and you can't love someone you don't respect. So, to anyone who is reading this and is experiencing a similar circumstance, have faith in your instincts. Let someone leave if they are bringing you down rather than up. Later, you'll thank yourself. I appreciate your patience with me over this whole ordeal. I feel like I'm finally back on track after a crazy journey. And you know who to contact if someone ever needs an outlet rewired. Story 3. This narrative has a title. My girlfriend met up with her ex during our anniversary trip, so I canceled her ticket for her return. She is now anxious to get back together. Hello everyone. Prior to starting today's video, I need your assistance. One of the greatest ways you can help us out is to subscribe, since we've observed the channel is losing some of its popularity. It's simple, free, and helps us continue to provide you with amazing content. Your assistance is much appreciated. Together, let's continue to build this channel. Many thanks. Let's begin the video now. I am a 30-year-old man who has been employed in Manhattan for almost 8 years as a financial analyst. Although it pays well, it's hardly the most glamorous job. Additionally, I've always enjoyed taking care of the individuals I care about. I've been dating Vanessa for the last 3 years. She is stunning, 28, and exuded an air of easy coolness and trendiness. She told me she was trying to become a fashion influencer when we first met, and I must admit that I was impressed by her drive. She had just over 3,000 Instagram followers when we first started dating. She shared a variety of self-portraits, sporadic clothing photos, and several sayings about pursuing one's aspirations. She talked about how she would eventually be recognized and able to work with well-known businesses, but she also made it apparent that she was having difficulty breaking in. But I enjoyed her enthusiasm. You wanted to support her because of the way she spoke about her objectives. Well, I wanted to assist. I wasn't attempting to save her or anything, but I reasoned that if I could help her, why not? Little things like taking her out to fancy restaurants, helping her choose outfits for her posts, or surprise her with items she had mentioned wanting but couldn't afford, were the first things. Every time she said something like, "Oh my God, this is perfect for a shoot," she would become really thrilled. It was amazing to see her light up like that. However, those small things began to grow into larger ones over time. She desired to add fashionable items to her wardrobe. She would add, "I have to demonstrate that I understand the aesthetic if I want brands to notice me." "Yeah, that makes sense," I said. I so began to occasionally purchase for her a high-end purse or ensemble. After that, it stopped being sporadic. The story didn't end there. She soon demanded better photos for her feed, not simply the ones I took while out with my phone. "Experts will have a significant impact," she added. I so covered the cost of many picture shoots with nearby photographers. Because influencers who collaborate with businesses are constantly in hip places, she then had to travel. I therefore covered a few journeys. It was only an investment in her future, and consequently ours, I assured myself. That's what I believed at the time, anyhow. Vanessa wasn't totally unappreciative, to be fair. She always grinned broadly when she thanked me, or wrote a heartfelt Instagram post about how fortunate she was to have someone who supported her. But eventually, the thankfulness became second nature, as if she would just cross it off the list and go on to whatever it was she wanted to do next. And to be honest, initially I didn't mind. I wanted her to succeed because I cared about her. She wasn't solely depending on me, though. As time went on, she anticipated it. My journey to Los Angeles around a year ago was a turning point in my life. She was certain that she would network with individuals who might start her career on this trip, so I had covered her airfare and lodging. Rather, she spent the whole afternoon shopping, relaxing by the pool, and snapping selfies. No networking, no gatherings, no attempt to genuinely establish a relationship. "You don't understand how this works," she said dismissively when I gently brought it up. "The first step is to create a picture." I wondered for the first time if I was being used. However, I ignored the idea since, to be honest, I am financially secure. I assumed she needed time to get her bearings and was simply trying to find her way. In addition, we were still content with one another, or so I believed. At this point, we are on our 3rd anniversary. I wanted it to be memorable and unique for both of us. I thus organized a lavish vacation to Montauk. I went all out and arranged tables at the best restaurants, a stunning suite with views of the beach, and even a few things I thought she might like. Similar to a sunset cruise. I thought she would be ecstatic when I showed her the ideas. However, her response wasn't what I had anticipated. She hesitated before saying, "Montauk is nice. However, I've been itching to see this other seaside village. It's more distinctive and smaller. I've heard nothing but positive things about the stores and restaurants there." Despite the sweetness of her tone, there was something strange about it. Who, after all, looks down on Montauk? She just said, "I think it'll be more romantic," when I asked her why she wanted to travel there in particular. In addition, we had never visited there before. I didn't want to ruin the occasion by disagreeing with her because she was so adamant. So I gave in. It wasn't like I was wed to the concept of Montauk after all. I was glad if it made her happy. That's what I told myself anyhow. In hindsight, that was the first true red flag. Vanessa wasn't only picky about our destination, she had a plan. I simply wasn't aware of it yet. The journey got off to a wonderful start. At least on the surface, Vanessa appeared ecstatic when we arrived at the charming seaside town she had chosen. She was everywhere taking pictures of the room as soon as we got into the hotel, even the free chocolates on the pillow and the view. "This is going to get so many likes," she said again. Unaware of how much that encapsulated her priorities, I would chuckle along with her. The first day was rather relaxed. We visited a few local stores, had some delicious seafood for lunch, then headed to the beach. Vanessa was radiant, and I couldn't help but think that perhaps letting her choose the location had been the correct decision. Her pleasure was worth it after all. I told myself that over and over. However, by supper, everything seemed a bit strange. Suddenly, when we were seated in this quaint little Italian restaurant, Vanessa mentioned marriage. She began spinning her fork around her spaghetti, you know. "It's been 3 years since we started dating. It's a long time." I nodded without giving it any thought. "Indeed, it has been." Grinning, I said, "It seems to have flown past." She returned the smile. However, in this sense, it seemed a bit too planned. "Isn't it time for us to start discussing the future? About getting married, you know?" I was not prepared for this talk on this trip, so I froze for a moment. Please understand that I had nothing against marriage, but we had never discussed it in depth previously. Her timing also seemed off. It's certainly something to consider after all. "Are you sure this is something you want to bring up now?" I said warily. Vanessa gave a little giggle, but it fell short of her eyes. "Why not? The vacation is romantic, the ideal moment to discuss our future plans." I tried to seem cool and shrugged. "All right, by what's next? Do you mean something specific?" Her tone changed as she moved closer. "Planning for marriage is a logical first step, isn't it? It's the subsequent action. Additionally, financial matters would be much simpler if we were married. We would discuss everything, no more separating things." It was there. I was unable to pinpoint the reason, but the way she said it made my stomach turn. It had nothing to do with commitment or love. It has to do with money. In an attempt to give myself some time to absorb her words, I took a drink of water. I remarked, "I mean, sharing finances is a big step. To be honest, though, I believe that in order to ensure our mutual protection, I would probably want to discuss a prenuptial agreement first if marriage were on the table." Vanessa's expression transformed in an instant. She set down her fork and looked at me as if I had just insulted her whole family. "A prenuptial agreement." Her voice was harsh as she repeated, "Why would you ever consider such a thing?" I was surprised at how she responded. In an attempt to diffuse the situation, I hurriedly stated, "It's not about mistrust. It's only a sensible move. You know, it protects both of them." She chuckled, but not in the manner I was accustomed to hearing her laugh. It was dismissive and icy. Whoa. I was unaware that you believed I would try to use you. I did not say that, I answered, a little defensive. Simply said, I believe it's wise to be explicit from the start. It doesn't imply that I don't believe you. Things were tight the next day. On the surface, Vanessa pretended that everything was okay. She chatted about her plans for the day and shared photos of her breakfast on Instagram with remarks on how much fun she was having on vacation. However, there was an undercurrent of coldness in her interactions with me. She wasn't particularly nasty or cruel, but she wasn't showing as much affection as she typically did. Without really saying anything, it seemed like she was punishing me for the prenuptial discussion. I tried to shrug it off, though. I reasoned that perhaps she simply needed time to think. Relationships aren't always smooth. Not a huge deal. I made the decision to concentrate on having a good time and unwinding. We strolled through the town all morning, stopping at small shops to observe the scenery. Vanessa appeared to soften a little, but occasionally she would say something that caused me to think twice. She once said, "This town is so charming. I'd want to return to that type of area, perhaps with someone who appreciates it." I blinked. What does that signify? She laughed and waved me away. Nothing. All I'm saying is that it's romantic. Throughout the day, little comments like that kept coming up. I told myself that I was thinking too much. However, a part of me kept thinking that something wasn't right. It was more than the remarks or the tension that lingered after dinner. It was her general attitude. She appeared preoccupied, as if her thoughts were elsewhere, deep within. I was aware that this was more than just small talk to her. She was in love, but she wasn't pushing for marriage. She pushed for it because she believed it would give her access to my life, money, and all the other things that came with being with me. I couldn't get rid of the feeling that the woman I thought I knew wasn't actually the one seated next to me by the time we went to bed. The trip began as usual on the third morning. Vanessa was lying in bed, scrolling through her phone, totally engrossed in whatever influencer content she was seeing. I ordered room service for breakfast after getting up. We decided to spend the morning unwinding before going out to see more of the town. She became alert while we were eating. She pointed to her phone and said, "Oh my God. This iconic bag store is located downtown. They only stock extremely rare items. I would never be able to shop at a store like this back home." In the middle of my toast bite, I nodded. "Sounds cool. Want me to go with you?" Vanessa shook her head quickly, almost too quickly. No, you don't have to. I know shopping isn't really your thing. Besides, it's probably going to take me forever to decide what I want, and I don't want you to be bored. That struck me as odd. We'd been doing everything together on this trip. Why suddenly the need for alone time? But I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. "All right," I said casually. "Just let me know if you need anything." She smiled sweetly. "You're the best," she said, leaning over to kiss my cheek. "I'll probably just be gone an hour or two." An hour or two turned into 4. At first I didn't think much of it. Vanessa could be indecisive when it came to shopping, especially for big purchases. But as the hours ticked by, I started to feel uneasy. I hadn't gotten a single text or call from her, which was unusual. Vanessa was the kind of person who updated me on everything, whether she found a cute cafe or tried on a dress she loved. I always got a running commentary today. Quiet. I decided to check our shared credit card to see if she'd made any purchases. Nothing. No charges from the bag shop? No charges from anywhere. That didn't make sense. If she'd been shopping for hours, surely something would have shown up. My gut told me something was off, so I grabbed my jacket and headed out. I wandered downtown for a bit, checking out the shops and keeping an eye out for Vanessa. Eventually, I found myself near the marina where the town's boardwalk ended in a quiet, scenic area with benches overlooking the water. That's when I saw her. She wasn't alone. Vanessa was sitting on a bench with a man. I immediately recognized Ryan, her ex-boyfriend. He'd popped up in a few of her old Instagram posts when we first started dating, but she assured me they were long over. They were sitting close to close. Vanessa was laughing at something Ryan had said, her hand resting casually on his arm. He leaned in, his body language, comfortable and intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. I stayed where I was, hidden behind a nearby kiosk selling ice cream, and tried to get a handle on my emotions. Part of me wanted to march over there and demand an explanation, but the other part of me told me to wait and watch. That's when I caught bits of their conversation. "You really convinced him to come here?" Ryan asked, smirking. Vanessa laughed, a sound that suddenly grated on me. Naturally, I told him this town was more romantic and sweet. Talked him a little. He bought it, no questions asked. Ryan grinned. "Well, it worked. I missed you." "I missed you too," Vanessa said, placing a hand on his knee. "Sneaking around has been exhausting." "Soon," Ryan said, leaning closer. "We'll figure it out. Just play along for now. You're too good at this." They laughed again. Completely unaware of my presence, my hands were shaking with anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. Pulling out my phone, I snapped a few pictures of them. If Vanessa was going to lie to my face, I needed proof. I walked away, my mind racing. This wasn't just some innocent meetup with an old friend. This was a full-blown secret affair. Vanessa hadn't picked this town for its romantic charm or unique shops. She'd picked it because it was the perfect cover to see Ryan, and I'd been stupid enough to go along with it. When I arrived back to the hotel, I attempted to collect my thoughts. Part of me wanted to confront her the second she stepped through the door, but another part of me wanted to wait. If she was audacious enough to pull this off on a trip I planned and paid for, she'd have no difficulty lying to my face. I needed to see how far she'd go. Vanessa finally arrived a couple of hours later, carrying a shopping bag from the luxury bag shop she'd mentioned before. "Hey," she said brightly, as if nothing was wrong. "I discovered the most amazing bag. You're going to enjoy it." I faked a grin, keeping my tone neutral. "Looks like you had a fantastic time. How much was it?" "Oh, I used cash," she answered hurriedly, avoiding eye contact. That was a clear falsehood. Vanessa never carried cash, and I'd already checked the credit card. The bag shop didn't charge anything. The bag must have been purchased by Ryan. My gut lurched at the prospect, but I remained calm. I remarked nonchalantly, "And the marina?" For a moment, her smile wavered, but then she got it back. "What? Marina?" "Yes. I avoided the water. I spent the entire time in the bag store." I pretended to trust her and nodded. "I understand. It sounds like a successful day." Totally unaware of the hardness in my voice, she smiled. "Thank you for allowing me to do what I wanted to accomplish. I am eager to reveal the bag to you." I remained silent after that. Vanessa carried on with her evening as like nothing had occurred. She showed me the luggage and discussed her plans for the next day. I listened, nodding when appropriate, but I was fuming on the inside. In addition to defrauding me, the lady I believed to be my love had the gall to do it with my money and my confidence. I had already begun making plans for how I was going to deal with this by the time she went to sleep. Vanessa believed she was in charge, but she was going to discover how mistaken she was. I continued playing back everything I had heard and seen at the marina earlier that evening. Vanessa leaned toward Ryan and laughed. They are repulsive inner jokes about my lack of knowledge. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The betrayal was terrible enough, but it was made even worse by her belief that I was foolish enough to fall for it. Vanessa was awake when I eventually forced myself to get out of bed in the morning. She was looking through her phone while relaxing in one of the plush robes provided by the hotel. She looked up and smiled at me as if nothing had occurred, bright and innocent. "Good morning, sweetie. Have you had a good night's sleep?" I wanted to confront her immediately, but I refrained from doing so. Not quite yet. "Yeah, I suppose," I responded in a bland tone. "How about you? Like a baby?" With a spectacular stretch, she said, "That was what I needed. Yesterday was a long day." As she babbled on about how much she liked the hotel, I nodded and poured myself some coffee, seeming to concentrate on my cup. She added, "I was thinking," as she turned her phone to display an image of a nearby eatery, "today we may have lunch here. It's adorable. I've also heard that the cuisine is fantastic." I answered without glancing at the television, "Yeah." Already my thoughts were elsewhere. To find out how far she would lie, I had to put her to the test. "What did you do yesterday then?" I sat down across from her and inquired in a friendly manner. "You were absent for some time." Vanessa didn't even bat an eyelid. "Oh, just going shopping." She gestured with her hand. "That store for bags was amazing. Choosing which one to purchase took me ages. She lied with such confidence and smoothness. Really, that was nearly stunning. I wasn't finished, though. Fascinating. I leaned back in my chair and said that. Yesterday I thought I spotted you along the marina. Her smile wavered slightly. The marina? No, I wasn't that person. I stayed away from the water. Then it must have been someone else. I sipped my coffee and shrugged. She seemed to be keeping an eye on me to see if I was on her. I avoided giving anything away by maintaining a neutral expression. Allow her to wriggle. We went to the restaurant she had selected for lunch when it was time. As soon as her drink arrived, Vanessa began snapping photos of the table, the menu, and even herself. With her phone angled perfectly, she added, "This is perfect. It will be adored by my fans." "It looks fantastic," I said, hardly listening. My thoughts kept returning to Ryan and how he most likely paid for her foolish bag. I was tempted to ask her directly. I refrained from letting her wriggle. This was something I had to be clever about. I couldn't get the answers I needed by confronting her in public. Vanessa hardly even touched hers when the food arrived. She was too preoccupied with taking pictures and browsing through her phone. At one point, she looked up at me and said, "You're so quiet. What are you thinking about?" "I guess I'm just tired," I said. "Didn't get much sleep." She smiled sympathetically at me. "Poor little one. All right, let's go easy this afternoon. We could go shopping together." This woman's audacity. I forced a smile as I nodded. "It sounds good." We finally arrived at a store that sold handcrafted jewelry. Vanessa turned to me and smiled playfully as she picked up a necklace and held it up to her neck. "What are your thoughts? Would my next post look good with this?" I said, hardly glancing at it. "It's nice." She sulked. "Simply lovely. Hurry up, sweetie. You're meant to get me excited." I made myself laugh. "Okay. It is beautiful. Joyful." "Much better," she said, smiling as if she were inquiring about the weather at the time. She brought up marriage once more. This woman's sheer courage. She had been lying to me and sneaking around with her ex, and now she was discussing getting married. I had the impression that I was in the twilight zone. I said carefully, "I mean, it's something to think about. However, I don't believe we have to jump right in." Although she didn't push, Vanessa didn't seem happy with that response. She must have clipped her tone. But after a while, correct. Finally, I hoped that would put an end to the discussion. The morning of our departure started early. I slipped out of bed quietly and grabbed my phone, checking the photos I'd taken at the marina. Every time I glanced at them, I felt a mix of fury and satisfaction. Anger because of what she'd done, and satisfaction because I got the proof I needed to finally leave this charade of a relationship. She believed she'd played me, but the game was about to shift. I packed my things, careful not to create too much noise. Vanessa didn't stir. Of course she didn't. This was someone who could sleep through a thunderstorm. Once my suitcase was ready, I took one last glance at her. I felt nothing. No grief, no regret, no second thoughts. Just a silent, smoldering wrath on my way out of the room. I stopped at the hotel's front desk. The clerk smiled kindly as I handed her the key. "Leaving early?" she inquired. "Yes," I stated in a light-hearted manner. "But only me. My girlfriend is going to remain here for a little while longer." Without questioning it, the cashier nodded. I made the last payment on the accommodation and gave Vanessa instructions to let her know that her stay had been extended at her own cost. After that, I canceled her return ticket using my airline app. I didn't want to make her life any easier after what she'd done, even if it felt frigid. My phone was exploding with Vanessa's texts by the time I arrived at the airport. I must have left a letter on the nightstand, and when she woke up, she found me gone. I had been succinct and direct. "Have fun on your long trip. For me, say hello to Ryan." The messages were first unclear. "Where are you, Vanessa? Have you coffee or something?" Then they were panicked. "Did you go, Vanessa? What on earth is the purpose of this note? Extended vacation? What do you mean?" At last they were angry. "You canceled my ticket, Vanessa. Are you serious now? It's really theatrical of you." None of them received a response from me. Rather, I switched my phone to quiet and got on my plane. I was thinking about Vanessa in the motel the entire time. knowing that she was stranded in a place hours away from home, without a ticket, and probably without enough cash to get one for herself. Without my help, she was aware of how financially reliant she was on me. Her well-planned existence as an influencer would unravel. Upon returning home, I saw a deluge of missed calls and texts on my phone. Vanessa had gone through all the stages, begging, furious, accusing, and, in the end, desperate. "Please, Vanessa. Let's have a conversation. This is crazy. I didn't even do anything wrong, Vanessa. You're going overboard. Vanessa, there's not enough money for me to travel home. How should I proceed?" It was her final message that made me chuckle out. "You're making me feel ashamed, Vanessa. How do you think I'll seem as a result of this?" She always put it first, the appearance of things. Not that she had been caught in the act of lying, not the treachery, not even the years she had been abusing me. No, her reputation was her greatest worry. Vanessa, classic. I didn't respond. I didn't feel the need to provide her with any closure or an explanation. She had to live with the decisions she had made. There was a calmness about me. I had lost my anger. I wasn't depressed. I had just finished. The days that followed were calm. I removed Vanessa from all of my social media accounts and banned her number. A couple of our common acquaintances inquired about the situation. It seems that Vanessa had already begun to fabricate her version of events, giving the impression that I had suddenly left her. However, the reality became evident when I sent them the photos of her with Ryan at the marina. It's unbelievable that she did that. According to one buddy, that's really low. I always thought she was a little strange. Another acknowledged, "Without her, you'll be better off." Better off. That sentence stayed with me. I felt as though I could finally devote myself without someone depleting my resources and energy, something I hadn't done in years. Conversely, Vanessa was not doing so well. Although I didn't care enough to learn how her influencer aspirations began to fall apart without my financial assistance, I heard through the grapevine that she ultimately made it home. Her engagement plummeted because she was unable to provide her fans with the opulent lifestyle they had come to anticipate. She unexpectedly arrived at my residence a week later. I didn't open the door far enough to let her in, but I did open it enough to glimpse her face. She had a horrible appearance. Untidy hair, puffy eyes, and none of the flawless appearance she consistently displayed on the internet. "Please." Her voice wavered as she spoke. "Give me 5 minutes, please. I can describe everything." I just felt indifferent as I looked at her for a while. "There's no need to explain," I said. "Vanessa, you didn't make a mistake. You must now face the repercussions of your decision." She began to cry, but I remained motionless. She choked on her words and said, "I was stupid. I didn't think. Ryan doesn't matter to me. You are important to me. No, what I can do for you is what matters to you." "I'm done with that," I said firmly. I locked the door after shutting it. As she left, her muffled sobs subsided, and I felt lighter than I had in a long time. I had no regrets because this was the conclusion she deserved. I was inundated with messages from friends when I woke up the following morning. On Instagram, Vanessa reportedly launched a full-fledged pity campaign by sharing cryptic tales of being deceived and beginning anew. Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who have wounded you the most, according to a friend who even emailed me a snapshot of a post she authored. I couldn't contain my laughter. When she was the one sneaking around with her ex, this woman's attempt to portray herself as the victim was quite bold. However, I didn't feel compelled to participate. Allow her supporters to accept whatever narrative she was fabricating. I had nothing to demonstrate. Sarah, one of our common pals, texted me that afternoon. She had never been swayed by Vanessa's influence or behavior. She had always been a straight shooter. She wrote, "Vanessa, huh? Vanessa is attempting to paint you as the villain." However, I informed her that I was aware of the truth. "Please let me know if you would want me to speak to anybody." Although I was grateful for the gesture, I didn't want to expend any more energy on Vanessa. I said, "Thanks, but I'm fine." Permit her to dig her own tomb. And she dug. I began to hear more and more over the course of the next week about how Vanessa's life was falling apart without me paying for her clothing, vacations, and professional picture sessions. Her image as an influencer began to crumble. Her fans were accustomed to seeing her relaxing in opulent hotels, sipping lattes at trendy cafes, and wearing fine clothes. She was now forced to pretend to live that way on a tight budget, but it wasn't working. She shared a picture of herself in the same clothing from the previous week. People in the comments are beginning to realize that Sarah texted me one day. I received a link to one of Vanessa's Instagram stories from a friend, in which she discussed eschewing material possessions and adopting a minimalist lifestyle. Given that this was the same woman who previously told me she couldn't wear the same clothing twice because it would destroy her appearance, it was amusing. The nicest part was that she had been dumped by Ryan, the man she had risked everything for. Through a common contact, I learned that he had left as soon as Vanessa's financial condition became apparent. He's not attempting to act like a father figure to her. She's on her own now, they remarked. Excellent. She was worthy. However, rescheduling the vacation to Montauk was the finest move I did, the one I had planned before Vanessa took over. This time, I went alone, and it was just the way I wanted it to be. I once looked at Vanessa's account, but all I saw were intermittent, now hazy mirror selfies, a few depressing attempts at a thrift haul film, and strange inspirational phrases. Her fan base had drastically shrunk, and the remarks were harsh. "Your lover used to treat you. Where is he now?" someone wrote. Another remarked, "Fake influencer vibes." It was an odd mixture of sympathy and delight. Life was becoming better back in Manhattan. After years of putting it off, I finally started attending to therapy. I find that discussing things with someone helps me get over my hurt and rage I was carrying without even realizing it. I discovered a lot about who I am, how I should create stronger boundaries going ahead, why I allowed someone like Vanessa into my life, and why I disregarded the warning signs for so long. Sarah was the final person to tell me about Vanessa. It seems that Vanessa was attempting to reinvent herself as a lifestyle coach when she returned to live with her parents. Unbelievable. Sarah sent a text. She is suddenly behaving as though she is a self-help expert. Is this unbelievable? I shook my head and chuckled. Give it to her. I no longer give a damn. That's it. I got my life back and Vanessa received what was due to her. Tell me your thoughts. Reddit. Have you ever dealt with a person like this?